Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, I'm Nurhidayanti. Today, I'm going to tell you about Knowing of the Short Story After 20 Years by O. Henry. Keep on watching. The first is characters. The main characters in After 20 Years are Jimmy Wells, Silky Bob, and the plainclothes police officer. Jimmy Wells is a 40-year-old New York City patrol officer described by Bob as a true friend. Silky Bob is a 38-year-old Chicago criminal who is proud of his successful career. The plainclothes police officer impersonates Jimmy Wells in order to arrest Bob. The second is analyzing plot orientation. The setting of the dark street in New York is introduced and the characters of Bob and Jimmy are described. Rising action. Bob's tensions is increased as he waits for his longtime friends who has not shown up on time. Bob sees the policeman walking up the street, explain his situation. Then the policeman walks away. Next, a tall man walks up to Bob, giving him the assumption that it is Jimmy. This man and Bob walk down the road, and Bob sees the man in front of the bright lights of a drugstore. Climax. The climax of the story after 20 years is when Bob sees that the man he is talking to is not his friend. Actually, the man is a police officer in plain clothes. He gives Bob a letter from Jimmy. Bob learns from the letter that the police officer who he met earlier was Jimmy, his old friend's falling action. The man tells Bob he is under arrest and hands him a note. Resolution. Bob reads the note and realizes that the policeman he spoke to earlier was in fact his old friend Jimmy. The third is conflict. The conflict in After 20 Years is an internal one that is not apparent to the reader until the surprise ending of the story. This internal conflict arises between friendship and duty within the characters of Jimmy Wells. The fourth is setting. After 20 years, take place on a street in New York City around the turn of the 20th century, and at a relatively quiet street in New York at around 10 o'clock at night. There is a wind and the rain. The fifth is theme. The theme of friendship, loyalty, and trust. Bob's punctuality in keeping his meeting with Jimmy perhaps best demonstrates his loyalty to their friendship. The sixth is plot summary. The story is introduced with the first characters, a policeman making his rounds of the dark, windy, rainy, streets of New York, rattling the knobs as he checks everything is secure on his bed. It is here we meet the second characters. As the policeman approaches, a man standing in a doorway of a hardware store. These characters is Bob, and Bob explains his reason as to why he is standing on the street at the time of night. 20 years ago, Bob and his best friend Jimmy agreed to meet at the exact spot at 10 o'clock at night. As Bob relates his tale, it is come to light that Bob and Jimmy have chosen two different paths in life. Bob moved away to the west to seek fortune, while Jimmy chose to stay in New York City. After hearing Bob's story, the police officer, who noticeably has not been given a name, goes on his way. Soon, Bob is approached by the third and final characters in the story, who greets Bob as his old friend Jimmy. Together, they walk down the street to find a place to eat. But it is during this time that the light shines on Jimmy's face, and Bob notices it isn't his friend. The surprise climax is then revealed as this man tells Bob he is under arrest and hands him a note. As Bob reads this note, it is then the plot is unified as his realizes that he did meet his old friends Jimmy at the right time in the right place, as he was in fact the first policeman who stopped to talk to him on the street. Knowing he was a criminal, yet unable to arrest his friend, the policeman walked away and asked a random bystander to confront Bob instead. And the last moral message of the story is that we must carry out our duties with full honesty and sincerity. A country will be destroyed by people who lie, and the country will be more advanced when the people in charge do their jobs with honesty. Okay, that's all the story from After 20 Years by O. Henry. If there is a mistake, I'm sorry. Thank you and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.